All right, welcome back to I'm So Beastly. I'm Mr. Richard. This is episode 21. I did plan on doing Atlantis for this episode, but instead I have a guest with me, Mr. Brent Michael Phillips. Uh, Brent Michael Phillips, he's a former world-class software engineer, I guess still is, from MIT. Helped to create the modern internet during his time in graduate school at MIT. After leaving MIT to pursue a technology startup, he experienced a horrific dark night of the soul, starting with severe repetitive stress injuries that left him in a constant pain and unable to work. Then he was betrayed by his lifelong best friend and business partner who stole the multi-million dollar company founded on the technology Brent developed in graduate school at MIT. This left Brent broke and land on permanent disability from chronic pain with no hope of recovery. After over 7 years of failed treatments, Brent went to a faith healer and experienced a true miracle when his right arm, paralyzed by a botched surgery, instantly healed. Brent then dedicated himself to the study and practice of spirituality and energy healing, and even started a business and got off disability. However, conventional energy healing did not have all the answers. In particular, Brent went through a painful divorce and constantly struggled with money. In fact, on November 10th, 2008, Brent was forced to declare bankruptcy. And the very next day, November 11th, Brent first met the man who became his mentor and finally achieved the big breakthrough. Through a strange healing process called Movement Feedback Holography, Brent finally cracked the code on both relationships and prosperity and was able to more than triple his income, find his true love, and start a family. Now it's Brent's mission to share this incredible power of beauty of movement feedback holography with the world. To learn more, get his books for free, and join Brent live to experience block clearing and higher consciousness, please visit awakeningdynamics.com. All right, so Brent, I'm sure, what I'm wondering, as well as listeners out there, would you please be able to give us a further definition or description of movement feedback holography, if I'm pronouncing that correctly?
Sure. What was so crazy was that week in 2008, because to give you a little more perspective, at that point, I had been a full-time professional energy healing practitioner for almost 5 years. So it's not like I was new to this stuff, right? I had been certified as a master in a modality. I had learned all sorts of, I had taken all sorts of different weekend courses. I had taught a couple dozen classes myself. I was working with people and things were going okay right up until they weren't. And long story short, I hired the wrong person as my financial advisor. And he stole everything from me and took out loans fraudulently and left me over $1 million in debt. And everyone told me, every lawyer, accountant, family member, friend said, bankruptcy is really your only way out. And that was devastating because I've finally thought I was getting my life on track after losing so much. But that's how it happened. And I didn't plan it this way, but it just worked out. One of those weird coincidences. I had my first skating session with Carl the day after I declared bankruptcy. Was what had happened was one of my friends, his name was Brian, had recommended me that I go see Carl. And it was literally my last $500 before bankruptcy I spent on this session. And it was so crazy because I remember I declared bankruptcy on Monday. On Tuesday, I had my first session with Carl. And it was crazy because he'd said, okay, Brent, meet me at the rollerblade rental station on Venice Beach. And that seems strange. I'm like, is this a healing session? Right? I'm not here for sports performance, right? Because I had figured, the healers, they either worked out of their living room or had a back room at a bookstore or a healing center. I was expecting like a bead curtain and a Buddha statue. But no, I met him at the rollerblade rental station on Venice Beach, and he had me rent equipment and put it on. And I had been on rollerblades once in my whole life before that. on a date like 15 years before. That was it, right? But I had skied and roller skated a little bit, so I was able to do it a little bit. And long story short, I rollerbladed in circles around the parking lot for about 20 minutes, and he videotaped me. And then after that, we sat in his truck and we watched the tape. And really, it just felt like a bunch of criticism. He was telling me things like, oh, you can't feel your left foot, or, you're out of relationship to your masculine, or you can't feel what's behind you, and all this stuff. It was a little interesting, but honestly, it just felt like criticism because I didn't know what he was doing. And it was so weird. And then we just finished, and he was like, well, nice to meet you. And I left. And I was actually pretty upset. Why? He hadn't done anything to fix me. I had expected him to give me a supplement or tap on my body or muscle test me or at the minimum shout hallelujah and smack me in the forehead, right? But none of that. And so I went home and I was upset. I actually called Brian and I started to chew his butt off. I'm like, dude, what is wrong with you? You know, I just went bankrupt. You spent the last money I may ever have to do something like this, to have some crazy old guy tell me to rollerblade in circles and criticize me. What the hell, man? Right? And remember,
Man.
again, I had been a full-time healer for 5 years at this point.
So you weren't obviously new to
Right.
the
I wasn't
process itself
new to the
to, yeah,
process, but this didn't look like any kind of healing I'd done before. This I had done things like theta healing and Psych K and
yeah.
EFT and emotion code and Reiki and a lot of stuff like that, right? This didn't look like any of it. I'd been to psychotherapists, I'd been to doctors, I'd been to physical therapists, I'd done ergonomics training, on and on. But this was none of that. And I remember what Brian said. He said, Brent, I get it. Carl's out there. And he said, just do me one favor. He said, give it 3 weeks. And he said, if nothing changes in 3 weeks and you really feel like this was a waste of time and money, let me know. I will sit and listen to you, yell at me as long as you need, and I'll try to make it right. And I remember I'm like, okay, I'll do you that favor, right? And I remember I pulled up my calendar, 3 weeks out, call Brian, chew his butt, right? See if I can get my money back.
And sorry to interrupt you. The timeline, is this before or after the arm went paralyzed and
This was 5 years after my arm healed.
okay, okay.
So that the arm healing was what led me to become a
Ah,
healer in the first
makes
place.
sense, right? Because it
Yep,
opened up your mind to,
yep,
oh wow, this is
exactly.
possible.
That's when I got into the woo-woo
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Intuition, manifesting, healing, spiritual study, meditation, all that stuff.
Actually,
So,
similar happened to me. I took my pain away from my chronic shoulder. Not it wasn't paralyzed, so different extent, but it's still so that's kind of the same type of thing with
yeah, it
what
really
kickstarted
was.
my career or
Yeah.
my journey.
So I was already doing all this healing stuff, but Carl just seemed way out in left field, didn't make any sense to me. And it was so crazy because so on Monday was bankruptcy, Tuesday
Mhm.
was my session with Carl. On Wednesday, I had a radio gig. It was something I did every 6 months. That I was on Lisa Gar's The Aware Show on KPFK in Los Angeles, and I was on about every 6 months. And what I learned to do was every time I got booked on the radio, I would rent a space for the next night. And then during the radio gig, I invite people to say, hey, if you like this, if you want to learn more, I'll be at so and so tomorrow night. Please come out and join us. And,
Okay.
I would do a talk, a demonstration, and it was always worth doing. But in the past, I had done this, what, 6 or 7 times? I might have 5, 10, 15 people show up. So worth doing, but it wasn't like it was going to make me rich, right? And I did the same radio gig I'd done before and rented the same place I'd rented plenty of times before. For anyone in LA, it was the old Bodie Tree Annex in West Hollywood. And it was so crazy. On Thursday night, I showed up. It was already jam-packed. There was a line out the door. And this was like 45 minutes before we were supposed to start. And I thought, oh my God, did they double book me? Right? I thought maybe Wayne Dyer was here or someone really popular, right? But, everyone's like, oh my God, it's Brent. And it was the craziest thing. I had 135 people there for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And by the end of the night, I had filled up my calendar for 6 weeks with sessions and sold out my next class. I actually had to get a bigger space because there were so many people that wanted to come to my class. And so, all told, by the end of the week, I had made over $50,000. And I'd never
That's a hell of a
experienced anything
week.
like that before. It was amazing because on Monday I was bankrupt. By Thursday, I had a little breathing room. It was incredible.
I'd
And
say
the thing that,
you definitely got your money back from that skating
oh
session.
yeah, only by about a factor of 100, right? But and the thing I want to emphasize is I had done the same radio show and the same presentation a bunch of times before. So that's not where the magic was. Something happened with Carl. And after this, I was like, wow. And what it came down to was that was my first experience of what we now call movement feedback holography. And it was so different. It was truly a whole nother level of transformation beyond anything I'd seen before. And that's why I thought it was a con at first, as it was so different. But it was, other than maybe the session where my elbow healed, one of the most important things I've ever done in my life.
Was the difference because your subconscious became aware of these things? Maybe perhaps if
Yes.
you're, behind you or this and that, whatever he was telling
Yep.
you,
That was absolutely
you were
part of
doing
it.
these things, but you weren't aware of these things
Yep.
happening, and now you are, so you can find a way to maneuver it,
Yep.
even if it's
And if we break down that term, what is movement feedback holography? What the heck does that mean, right? Well, the first thing is it's done with physical movement. And so what happens is you move your body, and a trained practitioner like Carl was and I am now can watch you move and read your energy patterns. They can read the myths and archetypes that you're running that navigate your life and call that out. But that's not all. And so remember I said I rollerbladed and he videotaped me. That was the movement. When we sat in the truck and he gave me the feedback that felt like criticism to me, that was the feedback. And the holographic piece is so interesting that one of the things Carl taught, the foundational principle was this: how you do anything is how you do everything. In other words, you bring the same you to everything you do, don't you? And what he found was you can watch someone doing almost anything and learn all about their personality, their myths, their values, and the trajectory of their life. That's what it means. And it doesn't really matter what you do. The rollerblading is just one example of movement. You could shake your hands. You could run in circles. You could bounce on a trampoline. You could scoop energy to your heart. You could throw a ball in the air and catch it. You could brush your teeth, drive a car. Doesn't really matter. The point is that a trained practitioner can read your energy. And my background is in software. The way I see it is he could read my source code.
hmm
He could see the actual instructions that were running my life. And that's why it was so powerful. And by giving the feedback, like you said, the subconscious learns to connect the dots.
and it starts working in the back of the mind,
Yep,
and then it
exactly.
transitions to the reality of
Yep.
our life. Okay,
He was sort of debugging
fascinating,
my source code,
interesting.
but it actually took me 10 years to figure out the last piece. Because when I started learning energy healing with Terry, it was much more conventional. That it was interesting, but it was relatively easy for me to learn. In that I had my first session with Terry in July of 2003. That's when my arm instantly healed. I did my first training in September. By the next summer, I had opened a professional business and I was teaching classes. So it was about a year from first exposure to teaching and doing it professionally. With Carl's work, it wasn't anywhere near that easy. It took me 6 years to just have a basic understanding of what was happening, and another five past that to really connect all the dots. And I'll mention the last piece because this was so important. that there's a meditative aspect to it as well. And Carl called it beaming. It's also been called quantum field entrainment.
Okay.
And
I've
it's
heard of
this,
the quantum field, quantum energy type of thing. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I have at least heard the term.
and it's a form of entrainment meditation.
Okay.
And as best we can tell, you're not only entraining someone to a low brainwave, usually in the theta range, you're also synchronizing the hemispheres of the brain and increasing vagal tone and adjusting the hormone balance, in particular vasopressin and oxytocin. And what it means for practical terms is it puts you into an altered state of consciousness. And what one of the things many people feel, even on a first exposure, it turns on your extrasensory perception. So what will happen to many people is you start to see auras with your open eyes as one of the first effects.
So essentially, it's like you're, how I'm understanding it, it's essentially as if you're living on mushrooms without mushrooms.
Very, very similar.
I mean, maybe not the exact
Yeah,
same,
I think
but
that's probably as close as you're going to get.
yeah.
In fact, after I had my first experience with Carl beaming, and I didn't feel it the first day. Why? I just wasn't sensitive to it. I was so stuck in my mind, I couldn't feel the energy. But with repeated exposure, I started to. And it felt so amazing to be in this beaming energy that the first time I really got it, I ran home and called my friends. I'm like, dude, you gotta go work with this guy. It's better than any drug I've ever done. And, done mushrooms, Aya, Bufo, more than enough weed for 17 lifetimes, et cetera, et cetera. So I
You got
was,
to expand the mind however you can,
yeah,
right?
I'm no stranger to the psychedelics and that side of life, but this was better than any of them. And mushrooms is my particular favorite. I think
That's my
mushrooms,
favorite by far.
yeah,
I
but
mean,
certainly
yeah,
for me, Bufo's too intense. I don't like becoming sick, and all the cleansing and preparation is kind of a downer. Mushrooms is right in the sweet spot.
especially if you get that nice right dose,
Yeah.
and I mean, I've always said this, my friend and I, we talk about it all the time. We think it depends on the mental state because it affects different people
Yes, the
differently, which a lot of
environment,
people
the
don't
people you're
understand that.
around, all that matters a
But
lot.
the way you feel, if you can get in that proper zone, I mean, I don't know how anybody feels any type of anger ever when which I mean, it's the love drug basically. So like how,
Yeah.
it's,
To me, my happy spot, find some good mushrooms, go to a live music concert,
mm.
preferably heavy metal or a classical symphony. Those are my favorites. And beam
Which
at
is
the
so
concert.
funny because that's such a 180 of style, I guess. But then again, I guess heavy metal kind of has symphonic
It has a lot of
tones
symphonic
to it. So
elements.
I mean, it's seemingly on the surface very opposite, but I guess when you break it down to its
Yeah.
core, they're very similar. I mean, it's
Ask almost
there's
any German. They'll say if Beethoven was alive today, he'd be in a heavy metal band.
so I guess it makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of I mean, music is math for sure, but with the symphonies, there's a lot of like they use a lot of Fibonacci sequence type stuff,
Yep.
the mathematical resonance, all that. So I don't, it's the smartest music and it does connect to rock, which is I don't know, it's interesting that two seemingly opposite
Yeah.
genres can be
Those are
so
my
connected.
favorites. Those to me,
Smart man.
that's my happy place. And so with Carl, what I found was part of the magic was the beaming.
Okay.
And that again, it's hard to talk about because there's nothing really close to it that I've experienced. That, beaming with Carl one time, we were on a retreat and I thought we were done for the day. So I'm like laying down at like 11:30 at night, ready to go to sleep, right? I hear banging on the door. I'm like, oh God, what? Right? I get up, it's Carl. He's all, Brent, get your clothes on. We're going on a hike. I'm like, dude, it's midnight. We got to be up at 7 o'clock tomorrow. I don't want to go on a hike. He's like, do it. I'm like, yes, sir. Right? As I'm old school. Your spiritual teacher says you do it. Right? No argument. And so he took me out to a path under a canopied forest, and it was completely pitch black. You could not see your face in front of your hands. And what he asked me to do was he said, Brent, tune into the quantum field and follow me. And it was the craziest thing. I started the beaming and I could see this white mist where Carl was in my mind. And I just followed it the whole time. And we walked for, probably about 15 minutes, must have been close to a mile. And so it was amazing to me that I could do it at all. Not only could I follow Carl, but I didn't run into anything, right? Except one time. Carl said, Brent, stop, take 3 steps back, turn to your right, continue. And I was like, okay. And then when we came out the other side, I asked him, I'm like, what was that about? He was like, oh, you were about to walk off a cliff. How wild
Jeez.
is that?
The fact that you didn't, I mean, that it's, but I mean, things, there are really not consequences, no coincidences.
Sure.
Things happen, obviously. Golly, that's fast. That's crazy.
And so here's the magic that what people will ask is, if rollerblading or shaking your hands can make you rich, why am I not already? Right? That you mentioned you're an avid rollerblader. And the answer is it's the combination of the effects. That the movement is there as a diagnostic vehicle.
Hmm.
That's why we would say it doesn't really matter what movement you do. The rollerblading is good because it's a balancing motion. And we use the rollerblading because you can't balance in your head. You can only balance from your body. So imagine if you're riding a bike. You're not thinking like a robot, gee, I need to turn my body at 6.2 degrees and the handlebars. No, you feel it, right?
Yeah.
You feel the turn. I used to have a motorcycle. You to turn a motorcycle by feeling, by leaning your body. And so that's the reason we have the rollerblading or the handshaking. It's just a tool to read the energy. The way I would describe it is it's like a magnifying glass. That Carl was so good at it, you could just have a conversation with him and he could read your energy while you're talking. But the movement makes everything bigger and more visible.
So
So
it
it,
sounds like the feedback is to really get just to get you to fully understand yourself to your
yes,
core
yes,
and then to expand out from there.
right. Because the
Okay.
truth is, we all think we're so clever and so smart, but we're all just running code.
Hmm.
There are, if you look at Joseph Campbell's work or Carl Jung's work, this is what it was based on. There are these mythologies and archetypes within us. That's your source code. That's what gives you a purpose in life. It's what you define as valuable, as interesting, as fun, even as painful. And really, it's all subjective based on your code. And the question is your behavior functional? So it's not like there's certain behaviors that are always better. I would say it's a matter of being well suited to your environment. So, simple example. If you live in the ocean, what's better, breathing water or breathing air?
Breathing water, of course.
Breathing water is pretty much what your go-to, right?
Yeah.
If you live on land, what's better, breathing water or breathing air?
Breathing air, no doubt.
That's kind of the point. There's no inherently superior. It's just what fits where I'm at. And what I've learned, and I'm sure you know from doing healing work, a lot of the energy we carry in the subconscious comes from the past. A lot of it is from the DNA of our ancestors. Some of it's from past lives, soul contracts, mass consciousness all mixed together. And it's really a question of, are those old myths and stories, does that old source code work for the modern world?
Well, that right there makes sense, and I'm not religious at all, but biblically speaking, that right there connects, of course, to the story of, oh, your ancestors are going to feel it five
Hmm.
generations down the line. They're not talking
Yes.
about a punishment. They're talking about the trauma that sticks with
Yes.
them and hinders them from hitting that energetic field, right?
Yes. It gets embedded
Essentially.
into your DNA
And
and
then it
passed
keeps
through the
getting passed down
generations.
and then gets harder and harder to break free the
Yes.
farther away you get from the actual source.
Yep. And that is why, for example, you talk about generational curses. That's how it works. It's not a magical effect. It's your DNA, people. It's that simple. And so what I found was the magic was this, that when you move your body and have a trained facilitator give you the feedback while you're in the proper brain state, that's when the magic happens. You got to have all three. And that's why if you're just going to if you're going to go vigorously shake your hands in front of a mirror 20 minutes a day without the right training and support system, you're just going to make your hands tired. Though Carl was a big fan of rollerblading, he said rollerblading, biking, riding a motorcycle, skiing are all great exercises because they get you out of your head into your body. And he recommended all of us rollerblade 2 or 3 times a week. That it was a great adjunct to the trainings we were doing.
Okay.
But to get the real magic, you
Yeah.
had to have all the pieces. And that's why it took me 10 years to figure it out. And it was one of those crazy things. It all came to me 2 days after he died. And I don't think that's a coincidence.
No, it seems like, I mean, well, you mentioned it soul contracts, right? So his
Yeah.
thing, he was meant to pass his knowledge
Yes.
on to you
Yep.
and, get you introduced to it. Because if he passes on to you and you hadn't gone through this process, then what the heck is
Right.
it all for?
It'd
Nothing,
be done.
right?
And it was crazy. He passed away in 2018. And we up to that point, we had been co-teaching our advanced workshops together. And we were a great fit because Carl had the magic, but I could explain it. And we were a great teaching team,
So
you know.
it sounds to me he was more in the he was I would say more purely 5D and you were kind of the bridge between the
Yeah.
5D and the 3D.
Yeah, I think that that's a fair way to put it.
Yeah.
And he passed away. It was 2 or 3 days ahead of one of these advanced workshops. And I was really nervous. I didn't know if I could do it without him. But something changed over those 2 or 3 days. And suddenly I understood it at a deeper level than I ever had before. And when I taught the workshop, I could see the energy and read the myths, and everything was just easier in a way I can't fully explain, other than there was some piece of consciousness that jumped from Carl to me when he passed away. Don't know exactly how it works, but something happened for sure. And by applying the three together, you can really have some amazing things happen. The way I like to think about it is pretty simple, that the feedback and the movement and the beaming is one of the few things that can create a direct experience of embodiment. And that's very rare in the spiritual world. Because let's face it, nowadays with the internet and social media, there is no shortage of spiritual information,
Of course,
right?
you can't always trust it all.
Yes, the downside is most of it is garbage.
Yeah.
At least in the old days when you went to the bookstore to buy the spiritual book, you had the publishers and the bookstores as gatekeepers. So the garbage didn't make it to publication. Nowadays, everyone and their monkey is putting up a YouTube channel or a TikTok channel with spiritual content. And just so you know, most of the time I think the monkeys is better. That's just Brent's opinion, right? At least it's pure and unadulterated and instinctive. But so there's
Pure
this,
authenticity is key.
yeah, there's an overwhelming amount of spiritual information out there. But information that's not properly embodied is just a mental curiosity.
Hmm.
And so a good example is I love martial arts. That was my first real introduction to spirituality was martial arts. So let me ask you this. If you go read 100 books on karate and watch 1,000 hours of karate YouTube videos, what's going to happen if you enter the tournament?
You're gonna get your butt whooped because you haven't
You're going to
experienced
get
any
your
of it.
butt whooped in the first fight because you have all this knowledge, but none of it is embodied into your nervous system.
None of it's put into practice. Yeah, so
Exactly.
yeah, you haven't felt it.
Same thing. You can go read
Okay.
every book on surfing ever written. Grab a board, jump in the ocean, let me know what happens. You're going to get wiped out
Yeah,
over
of
and over and
course.
over. And it's nothing personal. And that was the big challenge. That was part of the piece Carl brought to me that nobody else had. That I had taken lots of great trainings with lots of great people. I had learned how to do the healing, what I call second generation work. That things like Psych K, you use muscle testing, you find a block, you have a process, you clear the block on, right?
Mhm.
That's cool stuff and it has a lot of use for sure. But it doesn't directly embody you. It's shifting around the knowledge in your subconscious, which is cool, but you're not connecting it to action and purpose. And the way I would talk about it is the metaphor I like is a tube of toothpaste. That we all know what it's like when you get a brand new tube of toothpaste. It's really easy to squeeze out toothpaste, isn't it?
Mhm.
And then months later, you're down at the end, you're rolling it up, you're jumping on it, you're pressing on it, trying to get that last bit of toothpaste out so you don't have to go to the store and buy a new one, right? We've all been there. Um, that's kind of what happens to us. That when we are born, at least a healthy baby is chock full of consciousness. It permeates every cell of their body. The divine is still in us as strongly as it ever is. But what happens is as we grow up, we get into our heads, we learn language, we experience pain and sadness and loss, we get traumatized. Every bit of that is squeezing toothpaste out of the tube. That by the time we're middle-aged, most of us have squeezed all that toothpaste out of the tube. And metaphorically, we got to roll it up and pound on it to get a little bit to come out.
And the sad part is we don't even know what's been happening this whole time,
Right?
most of us. I
Most
mean,
of us don't recognize it because it happens slowly, just like aging, right? You look at me yesterday, you look at me today, I look the same. You look at me 20 years ago, you look at me today, I look different. That's true of pretty much everybody.
well, you spoke on the theta brainwave, though. I mean, what I've gathered is that up until you're about 5 to 7 years old, you're basically living in that theta
Yes.
brainwave
Yep.
until essentially the world takes you out of it
Yes.
through lessons or through experiences or whatever
Yep.
that are basically teaching you the wrong things of how we
Hmm.
should properly be living to acclimate you to the human realm. When, yes, we're human, but we're also connected to the source, the
Yeah,
spiritual realm,
that's
but we're
right.
never taught that. We're not told how to expand on that. We're only told
Yep.
how to expand on working towards getting a job.
Right. The mental game,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. The
And Carl's work with the movement is the only thing I've found that can put the toothpaste back in the tube. And what I saw in him when I did his intensive life training, the year after I had my first session with him, there were seven of us in the group plus Carl. And all of us were in our 30s, and I think the oldest guy was just turned 40. So we were all like 30s, early 40s. Carl was in his late 60s. He was the most flexible person in the group. He could do the yoga and Pilates and exercises that none of the rest of the young people could. And the reason was simple. He got the toothpaste back in the tube. And I think it's really interesting the way he died. He got hit by a truck. He was 77, I
what?
think. And he went on a 30-mile bike ride every day.
Wow.
How many people almost 80 do that?
How many people almost any age do
Yeah, he
that?
went on a 30-mile bike ride
Wow.
every single day. And he was about 100 feet from his house, just turning to go up the road, and a guy in a truck lost control, and boom, that was that. And honestly, it was just his time. You
Yeah,
know,
of
none
course.
of us last forever.
I mean, great words don't limit the living or the dead,
Sure,
unfortunately,
it's a fact. All of our greatest spiritual teachers die at some point.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
E yeah,
you have
even
to.
the so-called immortals say, yeah, we have to get a new body now and then. They just don't
Yeah.
last forever. But yeah, getting the toothpaste back in the
Huh.
tube, that was the key for me. And what I'd say is for
That's a great
people that have,
analogy, by the way. Wow.
thank you,
Yeah.
that for people that have done a lot of the spiritual work, if you're feeling frustrated, if you're wondering why the law of attraction isn't working in particular, that's the hidden reason why. No one told you that you squeezed all the toothpaste out of your tube. You got nothing left. And that's why I think about it. I see this all as simply technology. So if we look at a word like miracle, what is a miracle? A miracle is just a phenomena, something that science and technology cannot explain, right? So doctors, if you talk to oncologists, cancer doctors, all of them, if they do it long enough, see what they call spontaneous remissions, where people have cancer one day and then they don't. They just throw their hands up and then label it and move on. And so what I would say is it would be the same. Imagine if you took your cell phone back through a time machine, even just 100 years. They would call it a miracle, wouldn't they? It can
Yeah.
take photos. It can record video and voice. It can do math. Even without a network, it's a miracle, isn't it? Yeah, they would probably,
Yeah.
you take it further back in time, they'd probably burn you at the stake. They would think it was the devil at work, or they'd think it was aliens or something like that, right? Well, it's just the laws of nature that we don't understand yet. And so miracles are fully explainable by science. It's just our science isn't up to it yet. And this leads us to what I call the three generations of technology. That when I look at self-improvement, law of attraction, energy healing, intuition, spiritual study, meditation, all that cool stuff, I can group it into what I call three generations. The first generation is kind of your typical positive thinking. So think and grow rich, the law of attraction from The Secret, things like that, right? A lot of Tony Robbins, though
Hmm.
he kind of crosses into the second too with some NLP. And the hallmark of the first generation is it's only working on the conscious mind. That's it. So vision boards, mantras, mastermind groups, power words on your wall. These are all first generation technologies. They're not wrong. They're just primitive. In the same way, it's not wrong to have an old Ford Model T. It's just primitive. You go, why would you drive that when you can have a modern car that's faster, more powerful, safer, more fuel efficient, blah, 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 right? There's
Of
nothing wrong
course.
with it. It's just primitive. And so that's how I see your typical law of attraction. The downside is, did you know that there was a scientific study done on the law of attraction in Canada? They found it has a failure rate in excess of 99%. That's pretty bad, huh?
I mean,
And
yeah, it's basically zero.
yeah,
Zero success.
it's
Yeah.
not quite zero. In
Not
other
quite,
words, if you put 1,000 people in a hotel room and they all jump around like monkeys on the stage yelling about how they're going to be a millionaire, don't be
11,
surprised. Some of them will have a breakthrough.
yeah.
Why is that? It's simple. That a small number of people that the law of attraction works for because they are both embodied and they have no major subconscious blocks.
They got a little toothpaste left.
Yeah, they got some toothpaste left and no major blockage in the system. So, the channel's clear, you got some toothpaste, great, jump on the stage, you start making money. And I've known people like this. One of my friends I met through Carl, he had a hard time in his life. He went to Tony Robbins. He was on fire for the next year. He started making money like he never had before. But that's not most people's experience. Why? It's simple. The second generation to me is where it gets interesting because the difference between the first and second generation is the ability to work with the subconscious mind. And that's a game changer. So if we look at things like theta healing or EFT or emotion code or NLP, things like that, what they're doing is they have a specific process to directly work with the subconscious, usually involving muscle testing and some kind of tapping or machine or prayer process that makes the shift.
Well, I mean, the subconscious is really the thing that drives us.
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
it's like essentially the conscious mind is, I get good or bad analogy. I don't know. It's like we're like on autopilot, whereas the system's running in the
yep,
background for in actuality.
yeah. And if they were computers, the subconscious would be about 1 million times more powerful. That would be like an IBM PC from 1982 versus a modern gaming PC monster. Night and day difference, right?
The computer that sent us to the moon and the modern cell phone.
Exactly. Night and day. We're
Yeah,
talking a factor of 1 million.
which is crazy.
And
That's
so what happens if you're up against a force that's 1 million times more powerful? You lose
yeah.
every time, right? And that's where the second gen technologies can be very effective. So when my elbow instantly healed, that was an application of a second gen technology. I worked with a woman. She found some blocks. We released them. She did a healing. My arm went pop and my life changed.
Because you were able to actually essentially touch the DNA from the
Yep.
subconscious,
Yep.
from the
That's all
inside
it took.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what I found is that the second gen technologies are really good with physical health and emotional health and trauma release, things like that. Very good for starting intuitive work too. What they are not as good at, in particular, is manifesting and money and career and changing your experience of life. That's what you need the third gen for. That's what I learned from Carl. A way to put it would be, I'll use a psychedelics analogy, that when you do mushrooms or ayahuasca, you are still in there. It just tweaks you so you
Hmm.
have an experience, which is cool, right? Great stuff. Bufo annihilates you. You are not there anymore. That's why it's called the grandfather medicine. And so what I found is the first, second generation technologies changed my subconscious and delivered benefits to my life for sure. Absolutely. But I was still the same me on the inside. When I started working with Carl and doing the embodiment work, this me on the inside started to change. How I felt about things, how things affected me was significantly different. And in Chinese medicine, they talk about the three-legged stool. That would be roughly something like Tai Chi and acupuncture and herbs. In my work with Carl, the three-legged stool is the study of consciousness and awakening, the movement of the body, the embodiment, and the beaming. That you put them together, it changes how you think. It changes your priorities. It changes how you react to things. So it's not just the same you dressed in new clothes. It's a different you, an upgraded you, to put it in a certain way.
Would you be able to further explain, I know you said it's difficult to explain, but further explain beaming, uh, I guess as best as possible to the
Yeah, I'm
layman?
happy to give it my best shot. And so it is, first, I want to say that the reason we do the beaming is not for the psychedelic visual effects. Those are brain candy. They're cool for sure, right?
Hmm.
Similar with mushrooms. You get some cool psychedelic brain candy with mushrooms. But if you're using it therapeutically, that's not the main goal, is it?
No, it never
It's to
is.
allow introspection, a new perspective on your life, right? That's the lasting transformation. And so one of the things that happens with the beaming is the visual for most people. That the first thing that usually appears is you will start to see auras appear around people's heads. And in fact, everything has an aura,
Hmm.
even inanimate objects.
It's all energy. It's all
It's all
matter moving.
energy.
It's all atoms.
Yep. If you go a little deeper into the zone, what will happen is you'll watch the face blur and you'll see other faces appear. You will see time dilation. You'll see the person get younger and older, and you will see their other lifetimes.
Because time is all happening right now. It's all
That's right.
stacked. We just can't
Yes,
perceive it, but it's all
that's right.
stacked in the moment.
It's sort of
Past,
dimensionally
present,
stacked
future.
up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And so it allows us to look past the veil.
Okay.
And, I'll just warn anyone, if you do it with me, not all my lifetimes are human.
I know all mine aren't. I've been
Yeah.
told that many
So
times. So
you will see non-human
I'm
entities.
not worried
Now,
about it.
just so we're clear, I have an earth body. I was born on earth to earth parents, right? I'm not some kook. But the soul's lineage goes
Mm.
beyond it for some people. And again, we're all one, so who cares, right? The
One
rest is just fun.
consciousness. I mean,
Right.
that's
We're
all
all
it is
one, so
anyway.
the
Yeah.
rest of it's just play, really. But what happens with the beaming is it's a sensitivity you develop. And it's a little crude, but the best metaphor I can give is imagine an alien came to Earth and watched you take a pee and said, "How do you do that?" How would you explain
Okay.
that to him?
It just does. Like
Right.
you just do. I don't know.
It's a sensitivity you have in your body,
Put your
right?
hand on the wall and relax, I
You
guess.
you feel, gee, I have to go to the bathroom. It's
Yeah,
something you feel
okay.
in your body. Then you go and you learn how to relax the muscles. Again, it's just a feeling in your body and you pee. And this is why we learn that when we're what, 2, 3 years old, most of us. Then you have it for the whole rest of your
Once you
life.
get control over your
Yep.
physical actions, then
Yes.
yeah, it
And
just
that is another
becomes
aspect of embodiment, that it is the consciousness in the tissue that allows us to connect to it. The nervous system has to be mapped into it. But as we squeeze the toothpaste out of the tube, the nervous system gets disconnected from some parts of our body. And it's simple. Look at a teenager, look at someone who's 80. They move differently, don't they? They
okay.
have the same anatomy, don't they? They have the exact same set of bones and tendons and muscles and all that. They have the same structure in the brain and nervous system. But over time, we squeeze the toothpaste out of the tube. We lose the ability to feel and control our body.
And
That's
slow
why I
down the
mentioned,
aging process
yes,
essentially. So
that's why I
the more
mentioned,
toothpaste you have, the slower you're going to
yep,
age. Yeah.
that
Okay.
Carl in his 70s looked like he was in his 50s and he moved like a teenager because he was able to keep the toothpaste in the tube. It was pretty amazing. And so the beaming is a sensitivity you develop, and it kind of goes through a couple stages. What we'll call stage zero is when you don't get it all. Maybe you believe us, maybe you think we're nuts. That was me when I first met Carl. He was beaming me in that first session, but I had no sensitivity to it. A good analog would be I remember when I was growing up, I would watch like Olympic wrestling on TV. I didn't really get it. Just looked like two guys trying to hump each other, right? Wasn't that interesting. But when I studied Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and I learned to grapple, all of a sudden wrestling became really interesting. Why? I had a sensitivity to it. I could see what they were doing. I could see, oh, he's getting leverage here. He's setting up for this. He's what, right? That it became much more interesting and immersive. And the beaming is the same way. So at
Because
first,
you could relate to it on a
right,
deeper level than
right, I had a
surface. Okay.
context for it and a sensitivity to it.
Okay.
Same thing, I did a lot of martial arts. You get two big guys that grab me, I can throw them both on the ground. Why? I can sense where their balance is. I can sense where they're stiff and where they're weak. So a little shrug here, a little move of the arm here, and suddenly big guy falls down, right? And so what we're dealing with the beaming is mainly what happens at first. You may experience nothing. Maybe you think we're nuts. No problem. If you keep at it, and it took me about a dozen sessions with Carl before I started to experience it, you will start to experience it. Typically, you'll see the aura and the face changes first, but it's more of a kinesthetic thing. That what's going on is I would call it, you're taking the okayness of life and turning up the volume. So if you and I did a 10-minute beaming session, before and after those 10 minutes, nothing significant changes, does it? You got the same amount of money. Your body's the same, right? You live in the same place. You got the same car, the same job, the same girlfriend, the same annoying neighbors, whatever it is, right? Nothing changes in those 10 minutes, but it all feels different. Everything feels more okay. Your levels of physical pain reduce. Your emotional pain reduces. Your goals seem more achievable. Does that make sense? Everything just feels more okay,
But yeah,
which of course,
it's kind of like, life's essentially a puzzle, and then that's the one missing piece. Once you put it
yeah,
together, everything just starts to
yeah,
fall into place. Well, like you said, the beaming, you said it took 12 sessions. It's because it's basically a muscle. You're not going to
yeah,
be lifting 300 pounds your
yep,
first session out there. It's going to take
that's
you
right.
time to work up to it.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it was with me in doing CE5. The
Hmm.
first time we struggled mightily, and then after a few times, all of a sudden we're out there for 5 minutes and we're seeing things left and right,
There you go.
and having that experience.
Yep.
And
And
so
just so you know,
it's,
most people don't take 12 times. I was very stuck in my head. I was an unusually tough case.
but
But
it's
I'd
part of
say
it might
about
have
half
been
half of my students feel it the first time.
okay.
The rest, two, three, four, five is typical, right?
Now, would you say that the students that do feel it the first time um, are the ones that are already accepting of it more so than the ones that take a little longer because
I'd
and
say it's not
they're
a
loose?
mental acceptance, it's an embodiment thing.
Okay,
Their bodies are more comfortable with it, not necessarily their minds. So
okay.
if you got more toothpaste in the tube, you'll have a bigger experience.
Okay. So
That's what I found.
comes back to that
And
essentially, and
so
then
in stage one, you'll start to feel it and experience it, but only with a facilitator, right? I couldn't do it on my own, only with Carl.
mhm.
Then in the next stage, it starts to hit you spontaneously, where it will happen to you without the facilitator being there. So for me, the two things that triggered it often, one was Savasana at the end of a harsh yoga class. That something about the exhaustion of a power yoga class, laying on your back, I'd start to feel it a little bit. And that was really cool. I couldn't control it, but it showed up without Carl. Another was doing Buddhist chanting. the Soka Gakkai International, the Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, you get in a group of people all chanting, it had a similar effect. It raises your consciousness and pulls back the veil. So I'd be in a group chanting and I would see the auras and the distance distortions and all the cool effects.
So
And
essentially, you're learning how to easily tune your frequency into the universe in a
yep,
in a more efficient manner,
yes. And
in a
if you
more
keep at
consistent
it,
manner.
you'll be able to do it on your own.
Okay.
And for most people, that takes about a year. But just like anything, it depends on how much you practice and how serious you are and how much you want to put into it, right?
Yeah, of
It'd be
course.
like saying, how long will it take me to learn karate? That depends how much are you going to go to karate, right? You go to karate 2 days, 2 hours every day of the week, you'll be a black belt in 3 years. You go for an hour once a month, maybe 12. Nothing personal, right? Just
I mean, the
time
data's
in, time
there.
out.
It's
Yeah,
if you don't do it, you can't
yeah.
grow.
And beaming and
So
movement is very much like karate. At the dojo I practice at now, they have a saying. What's the difference between a white belt and a black belt?
practice.
It's the black belt showed up.
Yeah.
You show up enough times, you will become a black belt.
And this
You know,
it all comes down to effort. My day job, I'm a middle school teacher.
oh, that's so cool.
And my school's different, but I do try to, in the sense like I'm teaching about oceans right now, not an actual subject.
Hmm.
And so we connect everything in that, but it's kind of the same thing. I'm teaching them to be more introspective and trying to guide them there, but not like
Hmm.
force them in any way. Of course, you can't force anyone. They're not going to, but you just, plant the seeds and teach them how to understand themselves more, regardless of what
Yeah,
you're actually teaching them or what your, main topic is to teach them. And if they understand themselves more, then they're going to be able to grow more as an individual. And
yeah. I think that's amazing because the way we're going to transform our society is not just by having more professional healers and intuitives and people sitting on mountaintops saying, oh, that's cool. But the way we're going to change the world is to have spiritual people in regular places all over the place.
more points of contact.
Yes, spiritual middle school teachers, spiritual cashiers at the grocery store, spiritual mechanics, spiritual plumbers, spiritual lawyers, you name it.
I just got chills thinking about that.
Yeah,
Just
every job is inherently spiritual.
It's
And
like perception is reality. You know how
that's right.
you go into anything. Like, all right, for instance, I used to hate teaching at my old school, so I quit teaching for a little bit, and then I went back to
Mm,
it. This new school, now I love it. I enjoy getting up. I enjoy being there. I enjoy, the students, the staff.
that's
I
awesome.
enjoy it all. And so, but my perspective changed. Now I enjoy it. I love getting up. I'm in a better mood every day than before. I dreaded it, and my day to day was not as good, and it went by super slow, and now it's crazy. It's going by faster just because I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
Makes a difference, doesn't it?
It makes a massive difference, and it's cool to experience that because I can speak on that when I talk to people. Granted, it's a small thing, but it could make a big difference depending on the person, depending where they are in life, what
Yeah,
potential generation they're in.
for sure. And yeah, and so really my goal in being here is simple. I want to spread awareness that most people, even veterans of the spiritual world that have been around it for decades like me, have no idea there's this whole nother level that's there. And I wouldn't have found it either, except I was very fortunate to be introduced to Carl when I was young. Otherwise, I would have thought that, just the big conventional modalities was all there is. And I will say that the third generation work is weird. It does have a steeper learning curve. It can sometimes take a little longer, but it's also fundamentally more powerful in the sense that you can learn to drive a passenger car in a matter of of a few weeks, but learning to drive a race car, that takes years. They're kind of the same action, right? One is just at a much higher level of performance and precision. And I also want to emphasize my goal is not to push the most advanced work on everyone, not at all. That I live in Las Vegas now. And let's say I wanted to get from my house in Las Vegas to Tokyo. There's not one mode of transport that can do it, is there? What's going to happen is simple. I walk to my car, I drive to the airport, get on an airplane, fly over the ocean. I need three. And so the different modalities and techniques that are out there are like that. There is no one system or teacher or process that's the be all end all. They all have a utility and a value and a context. My goal now with my clients and students is I have a pretty broad exposure and understanding to this work. I'm certified in like 42 different modalities or something, right? And I've done, tens of thousands of hours of transformative work. And my goal is to understand where you're at and go, these are the vehicles you need to move forward. And it's not the same for every person.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, you got the three generations. Someone who goes basically, generation zero can't jump all the way to generation three without
That's
any
right.
type of
You
build
can't
up.
skip steps.
They have to go boom, boom, boom. You
Right.
can't not believe in any of this, and then all of a sudden you're trying to change your entire DNA essentially
Yeah.
with your mind, basically.
No good shaman would let someone with zero background in psychedelics do a big bufo dose the first time. That would be insane. You want to build up to it, right?
Oh, that would be crazy. Okay.
I like to say it's for the same reason that we don't let children drive cars. It's not that we don't love our children, we do. It's just not safe. You have to have a certain physical size and mental maturity before you can drive a car safely on public roads. It's that simple.
And the interesting side as well, if throw someone into the deep end like that, it could turn them away completely, and then they never
Yes,
start the journey that they could have thrived on.
it could do a lot of harm, quite
Exactly.
simply.
Yeah.
I know people that I've worked with clients that have been badly traumatized by psychedelics.
Hmm.
And usually it's some combination of too much too soon and a guide that didn't know what they were doing.
And a
And
lot of people I come in contact with when, talking to them about it, I always say, hey, do not do this if you're not in a good headspace because it
right,
does not affect each person the same.
yeah,
It's not going to affect you like, weed touches everybody the same, right? All these other, most of them touch everyone the same. Psychedelics, if you're in a good headspace, typically speaking, you're going to have a
yeah,
really nice time. If you're in a dark depression state, it could get you out of it, but also it's probably going to put you deeper and make you have a terrible time.
yep,
And I
that's
mean,
exactly right.
that's the only way. And I assume based on how you've explained it, probably the same to beaming or the third generation
It
of
is. It is
practice.
potentially harmful if you're not ready for it. In fact, true story, there was a guy, I won't mention his name, but he was my tech for almost 10 years. He ran my websites, things like that, right? And he was curious about the advanced work. And he kept asking me, Brent, will you do a session with me? Will you do a session with me? I said, no, I don't think you're ready. Do the training first. He didn't want to do the training. He goes, I don't need to do the training. I've been working here for 10 years. I'm like, dude, you should do the training. Eventually, he caught me in a weak moment. And I was like, okay, we did a 5-minute session. He never spoke to me again because
What?
I just told him the truth of what I saw in his energy. He wasn't ready for the truth. And he was so angry with me that he slammed down the phone and he ghosted me.
Which also proves that he wasn't ready for it.
And it caused a lot of problems. My website crashed, my DNS expired, right? All these things happened. And I had to go find someone new to replace him. And part of that was on me. I should have kept saying no. I should have insisted he do the training first. I was like, dude, just come to one weekend seminar and you'll be ready, right? He didn't want to. Carl said he did something even worse that when he was much younger and starting his business back in the 1970s, one of his first students was fascinated by the beaming and said, Carl, turn it all the way up. And Carl said, no, you're not ready for it. That's too dangerous. But he kept pestering him. And eventually he caught Carl in a weak moment and Carl turned it all the way up. Well, at that moment, he was a successful lawyer with a home and a family. He went nuts and lived for 20 years as a bum wino on Skid Row. Lost his job, lost his home, his wife left him, didn't see his kids. And I say that as a cautionary tale. You know, I'm way past that. I'm not going to do that to anybody anymore, right?
Yeah.
Just know this is like psychedelics. This is powerful, heavy stuff, or like medicine. What's the reason that we have prescription medicine? It's not safe for people without medical training to pump themselves full of powerful drugs, is it? No. So we put a doctor as a gatekeeper. The doctor will say, no, you can't have that. That's dangerous. You need this much in this dose, right? I'm not saying doctors get it perfect, but that's why they're there. That it's the same reason you can't just go to your local drugstore and buy gigantic doses of anesthesia drugs or painkillers or something, right? They are dangerous. They're also powerful tools that can save your life. Why? Any tool powerful enough to heal can also harm if used improperly.
I'll
It's
say
that
there's
simple.
a I don't know I can't remember the name of it, but I saw somewhere because I look up a lot of herbs and certain for teas and whatnot, and I cannot remember the name of it, but there was a plant that essentially can revive you, but it can also stop your heart or
Yeah,
permanently if taken too much. And I mean it's a small dose that could
sure.
do either or. Um, but I mean, I thought that was incredibly fascinating to see that
Yes.
it is a complete 180, does both depending on the timing
Yeah.
and the dosage, of course.
And that's why we need people that know what they're doing to help us. That's why if you're going to do psychedelics, find a guide or a shaman that is really experienced and knows what they're doing.
No one should ever do psychedelics or beaming or whatever by themselves for the
Right.
first time. It's
And honestly, I feel the same
because
way about artificial intelligence.
yeah.
AI is freaking amazing, man. Right? But if you aren't grounded, if you don't have a guide and a safe context, it can do a lot of harm. There have been people that have committed suicide because ChatGPT told them to.
Yeah, that
And it's tragic, but that's the whole point. It's the reason that the shaman that I did the Bufo ceremony with, he said, every single day of my life, I get people that just want me to source it for them. Oh, just get it for me. I'll figure it out. No, no, do not do that. Dangerous, right? It'd be like walking into an emergency room and taking a big hit of anesthesia. You don't know what you're doing. You could kill yourself or cause brain damage, right? So the point is, this is powerful tools. They can do incredible things. Heal your body, help you make money, find joy, find love, drop in, even move to enlightenment. But you just have to work with someone that knows what they're doing. If you do that, I'd say it's very much like driving a car. That if you pulled a caveman through a time machine, would you let him just take your car? No, he doesn't know how to drive.
doesn't know what a car is. Why would you
He
just
doesn't
let
know what a
him?
car is exactly. And even if you explained it, he doesn't know how to drive.
Your analogies are fabulous, by the way. I
Thank you.
love
So
them.
it's not that there's anything wrong with a caveman. He just doesn't have the knowledge set to do that safely.
He's ignorant. He hasn't learned yet.
Right.
You gotta guide them. You gotta show them the
Yeah.
experience. Let them,
Yeah. But
some may be able to do it quicker than others, but definitely
sure.
not from
Yeah.
zero.
But the fact is, almost every teenager that's interested can learn to drive in a matter of weeks. It's not that hard, but you just need to learn how to do it safely. That's all. You do that, and when I got my driver's license, changed my life. It's freedom, right? You can go to the mall anytime you want, go to the arcade, visit your friends, drive to Mexico. You can do anything you want. It's incredible. You just have to know what you're doing enough to make it safe. And that's the third generation. It's really powerful. Used properly, it will absolutely change your life. We can finally put that toothpaste back in the tube. And I have not found anything else. No, to be fair, I don't know everybody in the world. And I'm sure there's all sorts of teachers and shamans and gurus that I don't know about. But I've spent almost 25 years of my life doing this as a full-time professional. I haven't found anything like it.
No, I mean, well, I so when I was looking you up, I it reminded me of something that connects to what you're saying, basically with the trauma healing. So there was the story I saw about this guy who had cancer. He got in a car crash and then forgot he had cancer, and his cancer went away.
There you go.
And I mean, to a lot of people, that sounds crazy. That sounds made up. That sounds
Not to me.
like fallacy. But when you understand things like you do, or like I do to a lesser extent, it sounds like, but which is perfectly fine, but enough to know these things are possible.
Yeah, it's like you got a background task running on your computer. If you don't know about it, you can't control it. It could be sucking up resources and crash your machine, right? All you got to do is kill the process and it's done. Cancer is just like that. It's just a background process running in your body.
I mean,
When you
it's
know
it's it's a
how to
negative, it's a
detect it.
low frequency. It's a negative
Yeah,
frequency that's just off balance. It's
yeah,
you're out of equilibrium when that happens. I mean, that's
yeah,
essentially what it is. You can
yeah,
fix it like you healed your paralyzed arm. I took pain away I had 17 years of chronic daily shoulder pain, and in a 30-minute session, could have been an hour, I don't know, I was in a super strong meditation, focused the energy there, and two and a
yeah,
half, 3 years later, haven't felt any pain in my shoulder at all.
yeah. And the reason is simple.
It's
Our bodies are like a computer screen. They are recreated out of nothing many times a second. Just like on your computer screen, it's generally redrawn 60 times a second based on the software, right?
because the cells are regenerating themselves
Right.
constantly. Yeah.
So if you change the blueprint, then the physical body can shift instantly. Why? It's created over and over many times a second. Just most people don't know how to get to the source code. And when I had that session with Carl, through the beaming and the movement and the feedback, it changed my blueprint. And all of a sudden, money started to come to me. It didn't make any logical sense. Same way that I didn't think some lady praying over me could heal my arm. It did. It freaking worked, right? And as an engineer, I'm all about results, function over form. And that's kind of my angle with healing. I don't mind the mysticism and the woo-woo. I just think it gets in the way.
I mean,
So I
there's
say,
not necessarily a need for it if you can
yeah,
be efficient without it. I mean,
that's right.
you honestly, no offense, just by looking at you, I wouldn't have expected, you to be on this path. Obviously,
No,
looks are deceiving, it doesn't matter. But based on what you're talking about, the woo-woo stuff and whatnot, and of course, human nature, where, we've become programmed essentially to look at someone and think, oh, they could do this, or oh, they can't do that.
right.
Never would I have guessed, oh man,
Yeah,
Brent is a wonderful healer and whatnot. Simply that. And then no offense to anything, just,
yeah,
I'm sure you get that all the
yeah.
time.
Why? I'm still an engineer. That
Yeah.
didn't change. I talk like an engineer. I think like an engineer. I dress like an engineer. Just how I am. And that's one of the things I found about myself. I used to fight that. When I learned to just be what I am, life got easier.
Authenticity. Why
Yeah,
why fight who you are? It just makes
right,
it that's where the blockages come in, right?
right.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that's where most of the blockages come anyway. And it just stop judging yourself and just be the way the divine made you. But like for me, a big breakthrough in Carl's intensive was he was always on my case about being in my head. One day I showed up with a big F you attitude. Okay, screw you guys. I'm just going to be in my head. Boom. I had a huge transformative experience and I started making even more money. And it was that simple. I had my first transcendental experience on one of his retreats. He said, Brent, no music, no other modalities, just do this stuff this weekend. I'm like, yes, sir. And we got into a little fight, and I went off into my room and I put on some music and oof, connected to everything. Didn't last very long, but it was incredible. So there is some magic in the defiance because it lowers your resistance to what you're fighting against, if that makes sense. What you resist will persist. And we actually, if you get deeper into the movement work, that's one of our guiding principles. That you need to exaggerate that which you move away from to lower your resistance, then you can actually move away from it. If you fight it, you're going to strengthen it. Imagine we're both pushing on opposite sides of a swinging door. I push harder, you push harder, I push harder, you push harder. The door doesn't move, does it? All I got to do is back off for a second and the door opens without any effort.
flow like water.
Yep, that's how it goes.
With the Tao Te Ching, the Tao, they basically, I mean, it's essentially what it comes down to, understanding that fully, what that
Yeah,
those proverbs, those messages, those hymns, poems, whatever you want to call them, basically said that just flow and things kind of just. But then
yeah.
it comes back to the tube of toothpaste, right? You
Hmm.
can't put it back in. Just let it squeeze. The more you force it, it's going to just shoot out and make a mess.
Yep. And
Easy
it's
does it.
funny. I remember I forced myself to read the Tao Te Ching in the 90s. I hated it. It didn't make any sense. I thought it was stupid. Then I read it again 20 years later. Oh my God, I love it.
After it hits,
Yeah,
after you
every
experience these
line,
things.
every page, every line has value. I could sit and meditate on one line for an hour and
And
scratch
that
the surface, you know?
that's kind of how for a while the Bhagavad Gita was for me because it was such a peaceful book. The words were so peaceful, and every time I opened it, it was something I needed that day.
Yeah.
And then, like last week, one of my students said, "Here, you should read this, The Archer, by the author who wrote The Alchemist."
Okay.
I can't remember exactly,
Yep.
but basically, it's like, um, talking about the target and pulling the bow back and your
Hmm.
footwork and this and that, and relating it to life and how to essentially take control of things and do what you're talking about, not
Hmm.
necessarily knowing how to do it, but kind of
Yeah,
what to do. And so it's just put things in perspective like a little more. But it's interesting. When you read something is more important than sometimes what you
for
read.
sure. And you
But
probably know there's an entire martial art in Japan that is essentially Zen archery.
oh, I did not know that, but
Yep.
that is
That is a real thing.
that is awesome.
Yep.
Well, I think we've been on for a little over an hour. Um, I think we've had a fabulous conversation,
Too.
and thank you so much for your time and your knowledge.
Well,
Uh,
excited to be here.
and I was amazed. Didn't even know how you found me with my 5 listeners, but Pod Pitch, kudos to that. You've been wonderful. I've had a great time. I've had a lovely conversation.
No, this has been awesome. The thing I love about the podcast is I get to connect with all sorts of people that I probably never would have met other ways.
I mean, there's a relatively 0% chance we would have ever had a
Yeah.
conversation
Yeah.
without this medium.
Exactly.
And I love it. I think it's one of the best conversations I've ever had.
And what Tara used to teach me was if what you do affects just one person in the world, it was totally worth it. And that's okay if it's just you. No worries, right? Even if no one ever listens to it, I feel my job is done.
Well, I'm glad you were able to do your job here. It's been absolutely wonderful. I will post your website, email, any book links you want me to in the
Okay.
description. Um, those will all be available however you want them to be.
Okay.
And yeah, so this has been episode 21 of I'm So Beastly. I'm Mr. Richard. Like, follow, subscribe, all that jazz. Do your thing. And then my books are also in the description. Winston Feathersby, I'll let you know how it goes. And Dream Journal, buy them, don't buy them. That's up to you, but they're fabulous reads. Um, and we will catch you next time. Ta-ta, kittens. I don't know.